The maintenance bay was not a place for wanderers. Every inch of its reinforced walls, every lock and scanner, existed to keep intruders away. Yet Commander Robert Hayes stopped dead in the doorway, struck by the impossible sight before him. A woman stood at the steel table. No badge, no uniform, just plain slacks and a simple blouse, her auburn hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked like someone who belonged in an office cubicle, not a high-security weapons facility. But that wasn't what chilled Robert. What chilled him was the weapon. On the table lay a Barrett .50 caliber sniper system, dismantled into gleaming pieces. The kind of weapon so heavily restricted it was monitored like nuclear material. She worked on it as though it belonged to her, cleaning each part with practiced ease. Her movements calm, precise, and unnervingly confident. Robert's voice cut through the room, sharp and commanding. "Ma'am, you are not authorized to handle that equipment." She did not flinch. She did not even look up. Her hands moved steadily, polishing the long barrel. "I know," she said. The answer made Robert's stomach twist. No excuses. No panic. Just quiet acknowledgement, as though she were confirming the weather. He stepped forward, boots echoing on the concrete. "This is a restricted area. That rifle requires top-secret clearance. Step away from it now." "Yes," she murmured, still focused on her task. Sensitive, compartmented information. "I'm familiar." Robert froze. Civilians didn't talk like that. She knew terms that lived in the deepest vaults of the system. He quickly sealed the door behind him with the electronic lock. No interruptions. No escape. His tone dropped lower, heavy with controlled anger. "Who are you? How did you get inside?" At last, she lifted her gaze. Her eyes were dark, steady, carrying the calm of someone who had looked death in the face before. Someone who knows this rifle must be perfect in the next 4 hours. "That doesn't answer me," Robert growled. "It's the only answer that matters." He studied her. 15 years of service had taught him how to read people, agents, prisoners, enemies on the battlefield. She didn't look like any of them, yet she carried herself with the poise of a veteran. And the rifle. Robert recognized it. He had noticed its serial number in a classified log weeks ago. It hadn't been serviced in over 8 months, though it was listed as active. That had troubled him, but the matter was buried under clearance levels beyond his reach. "How do you know about its condition?" She continued her work, adjusting the scope with delicate precision. "Because it matters." Every instinct screamed at him to sound the alarm. Yet another instinct, older, quieter, but stronger, warned him that she was here for a reason. Her knowledge was too specific, her movements too professional. She didn't just know this weapon. She understood it. "What is your name?" he demanded. For the first time, her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Today, Sophia Carter, civilian contractor, specializing in precision equipment maintenance." She placed the cleaning rod down with deliberate care. "Tomorrow, I'll be whoever needs to be behind this rifle when the shot must be taken." The words hung in the sterile air like smoke. Ambiguous, dangerous, unshakable. Robert felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He was a commander, a guardian of rules, a man of protocol. Yet here he stood, face to face with someone who moved beyond rules, beyond clearance codes, beyond the very fabric of authorization itself. The woman, Sophia Carter, if that was even real, had no fear, only purpose. And Robert Hayes found himself asking the unthinkable. Should he stop her or protect her? Robert Hayes stood frozen, the hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing in his ears. The woman's words echoed inside him, each syllable pressing against years of military discipline. "Tomorrow, I'll be whoever needs to be behind this rifle when the shot must be taken." Her tone hadn't been boastful or dramatic. It had been calm, like a doctor stating a diagnosis, like an engineer pointing out a flaw in a machine. Robert had met liars, manipulators, desperate men trying to bluff their way out of impossible situations. She wasn't one of them. He forced his voice steady. "Sophia Carter. That's the name you're using today. Fine. But names are nothing without credentials. You walked past multiple biometric scanners, through locked corridors, into one of the most secure rooms in the facility. That doesn't just happen." "How?" Sophia tilted her head slightly, examining a small component of the rifle under the harsh light. The same way you're wondering why this particular Barrett hasn't been serviced in 8 months. Robert stiffened. That thought had indeed crossed his mind. Late at night, while reviewing maintenance schedules, the file had been locked at a level far above his clearance. He'd assumed it was an oversight or a decision made by people with more authority. How could she possibly know what he had privately questioned? This rifle, she continued, is due for deployment tomorrow, and it isn't ready. If it fails, men die. That's why I'm here. Her words struck with the weight of inevitability. Deployment tomorrow. Yet there had been no briefing, no orders passed down to his level. He felt as though he were staring at the edge of a puzzle with half the pieces missing. You shouldn't know that, Robert said. She gave a faint shrug. I know more than you think. Robert turned toward the base terminal, his hands tense. Against every protocol, every instinct drilled into him. He entered his codes. The machine accepted them, the green glow of access lighting the screen. He typed in the series she had casually provided, half expecting it to be nonsense. But it wasn't. A new file opened, one he had never seen. Serial 23847. Deployment record classified. 73 confirmed eliminations. Maximum engagement range, 3,247 meters. Last maintenance, 8 months, 12 days. Robert's throat tightened. 73 eliminations? At that distance, it defied belief. The longest confirmed sniper kill he knew of was just under 3,600 meters, a miracle shot recorded in Afghanistan. Yet here was a weapon with a record that suggested not one miracle, but consistency. He turned slowly. This can't be real. Sophia didn't pause in her work. It's real enough for the people who came home because of it. Robert studied her again, the controlled movements of her hands, the almost ritualistic care with which she treated each piece of the rifle. She wasn't just maintaining it. She was attuning it, aligning steel and scope like a pianist preparing for a performance only she could play. You're telling me those shots, those numbers, they're yours? Sophia's expression remained unreadable. The record shows what it's allowed to show. The implication struck him like ice. If the official count was 73, how many were hidden? How many unrecorded missions had she carried out under the cloak of silence? He swallowed hard. So you're not just a contractor. She finally looked up, and the force in her gaze pinned him where he stood. I am what the mission requires. That's all you need to know. The silence stretched between them, heavy with truths that would never be spoken. Robert had spent his career navigating classified operations, but he had never been this far down the rabbit hole. He felt as though the air itself was different here, heavier, denser, filled with secrets too dangerous to name. He asked the question anyway. What operation requires this rifle tomorrow? Sophia set down the bolt carrier, wiped her hands with a cloth, and met his eyes. The kind where missing the shot means American personnel don't return home. Robert felt a chill slide down his spine. He knew that tone. He had heard it before in briefing rooms before black operations, in hushed conversations on airfields before missions the world would never hear about. It wasn't bravado. It was certainty. He realized then that he had a choice. He could call security, follow every regulation written into his career, and let the bureaucracy chew this woman apart. Or he could trust instincts sharpened through years in the field. And those instincts whispered that Sophia Carter was not an intruder, not a threat, but something else entirely. Something the system itself didn't admit existed. Her hands moved again, quick and confident, reassembling the rifle with flawless speed. Piece by piece, it came back together, less a weapon than an extension of her being. Robert watched, silent, the question burning in his chest. Who are you really? Sophia didn't answer aloud. Instead, she glanced at him with a look that seemed to say, some things are better left unspoken. Robert Hayes had faced chaos before. He had endured firefights in foreign deserts, ambushes in rain-soaked jungles, and the crushing silence of submarines running dark beneath hostile waters. Yet nothing compared to the storm of questions now tightening in his chest as he watched Sophia Carter. She reassembled the Barrett with an elegance that was almost unsettling. Each piece fit into place, as though guided by instinct rather than memory. Her hands bore the faint scars of repetition. Small cuts, flattened fingertips, calluses only a lifetime of weapons work could leave behind. This wasn't the work of an office contractor. It was the signature of someone forged in the field. Finally, Robert broke the silence. "You've done this before. Too many times to count. But why you? Why this rifle?" Sophia snapped the receiver closed with a crisp click. "Because I know it better than anyone alive. Every weapon develops a signature. A slight tremor in recoil. A whisper in the barrel when the temperature shifts. I've learned this one like most people learn a language." Her voice carried no pride, no arrogance. Just truth. Robert circled the table, studying her as though she were a puzzle he might solve if he found the right angle. The file showed 73 confirmed eliminations, at ranges no ordinary sniper could manage. Sophia met his eyes, unwavering. Confirmed kills are numbers. The real story is the lives saved by each one. That response hit him harder than he expected. Numbers on a screen were cold. Her words painted them in blood and consequence. For the first time, he felt the weight behind her calm exterior. This wasn't about statistics. It was about duty. Still, his instincts as an officer pressed forward. What you're describing isn't just classified. It's buried beyond clearance. If you exist, then you're a ghost. A shadow even our own command pretends isn't real. Sophia's hand stilled on the rifle. "Exactly." Robert exhaled slowly. "And tomorrow's mission, what is it?" She paused, as if measuring how much truth to reveal. "A threat has surfaced. If it isn't neutralized, Americans die. The official story will never mention me. It will be dressed up as the success of a coalition task force. But when it's over, and when the target never draws another breath, the world will be just a little safer. That's all that matters." Robert clenched his jaw. He had heard similar words before from men and women who worked in the gray spaces of conflict. Yet her delivery carried something more, an unshakable conviction that this was not only her skill, but her responsibility. He moved closer, lowering his voice. "Do you ever think about it? The cost. The weight of being the one to decide who lives and who doesn't." For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Vulnerability. "Every time I pull the trigger, the cost never goes away. But if hesitation means failure, then others pay instead. My burden is lighter than theirs." Her honesty caught him off guard. Soldiers often hid behind bravado or silence. Sophia carried her ghosts openly, not as weakness, but as proof of purpose. The hum of the lights pressed in on them. Outside the sealed room, the world went on unaware. Inside, truth bent like metal under heat. Robert realized he was standing in a place where regulations had no authority. "Tell me straight," he said at last. "Is tomorrow even survivable for you?" Sophia's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Safety isn't my luxury. Completion is." Her words chilled him more than gunfire ever had. She wasn't measuring success by her survival, but by whether the mission ended as intended. He suddenly saw her not as a contractor, not even as a soldier, but as something sharper, colder, a weapon shaped into human form. Robert folded his arms, grounding himself. "Then what do you need from me?" Sophia's hands resumed their fluid dance, tightening the last screws on the scope. "Your silence. Your trust. Nothing more." It was such a simple request, yet impossibly heavy. Silence meant burying everything he had seen, every protocol she had violated, every instinct demanding he report her. Trust meant believing that she was the answer to a problem he wasn't even allowed to know existed. Robert felt a surge of conflict. His career had been built on obedience, yet something deeper, something human, told him this was bigger than orders. He finally nodded. "Then you'll have both." Sophia gave him a look, brief but genuine. "Good. Because tomorrow, when the news reports a victory no one understands, you'll know the truth. You'll know why it mattered." Her rifle now fully assembled, she lifted it with effortless strength, cradling it like an extension of her own body. Robert watched her movements, every gesture practiced, intimate, like a ritual honed across countless missions. He felt the weight of an unspoken understanding settle between them. Whatever tomorrow demanded, Sophia Carter would face it, and Robert Hayes would carry the memory, even if the world never did. The Barrett rested on the table once more, whole and gleaming under the harsh fluorescent light. Sophia Carter's hands lingered on it, not out of hesitation, but reverence. Robert Hayes realized she wasn't merely maintaining a weapon. She was preparing something sacred, an instrument balanced between life and death. He broke the silence. 3,247 meters. Sophia looked up, her dark eyes steady. That was the longest. Robert shook his head. No one can make that shot consistently. The ballistics alone, muzzle velocity, bullet drop, wind drift. It requires calculations so precise, so impossible, it borders on fantasy. Sophia calmly picked up the scope and adjusted it. Temperature, humidity, air density, barometric pressure, target movement. They're all variables, yes, but variables can be measured, controlled, anticipated. Her tone was casual, almost detached, yet filled with certainty. She wasn't explaining a theory. She was describing a memory. Robert stared at her, his voice low. Are you saying you've done it more than once? Sophia placed the scope gently back in place and tightened the screws. I'm saying when the mission requires it, the shot is made. The words settled over Robert like frost. He tried to imagine it, lying prone on uneven ground, the world stretching out for nearly 2 miles, the target barely more than a speck against the horizon. Even the smallest tremor in breathing would send the bullet far off course. Yet she spoke as if it were routine, as though impossible was just another word for necessary. Jesus, Robert muttered. Divine intervention isn't available on the battlefield, Sophia replied dryly. So sometimes I handle it myself. The flicker of humor caught him off guard. Despite the impossible claims, despite the chilling calm, she was still human. Yet even that humanity was wrapped in layers of secrecy, molded by a role few could even comprehend. Robert leaned against the cold steel table, searching her expression. How many people know who you really are? Sophia's response came without hesitation. As few as necessary. And how many need to know? Her gaze held his. Even fewer. The message was clear. Whatever shadow world she operated in, it thrived on silence. Discretion was survival. Exposure was death. Robert exhaled. Then why tell me anything at all? Because you saw me, she said simply. And now you need to understand enough to stay silent. Her honesty left him with a hollow ache. He had spent his career guarding secrets, yet this one felt heavier than all the others combined. He asked, almost against his will, and tomorrow's mission, what kind of risk are we talking about? Sophia began packing away her cleaning tools, every movement measured. Every mission I take is high risk. Tomorrow is just more complex. The environment will be unstable, the variables constantly shifting. Missing isn't an option. Robert studied her, trying to picture what kind of operation demanded such extraordinary precision. He thought of diplomats in foreign embassies, convoys snaking through hostile terrain, leaders walking unknowingly into crosshairs. You're telling me if you miss. I won't, she interrupted, her voice sharp final. That's the difference between me and anyone else they could send. Her certainty was absolute, unnerving. Robert realized that to her, doubt was more dangerous than the enemy. Doubt killed. Confidence kept people alive. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken truths. Robert finally asked the question that had been circling his mind since their encounter began. Why do you keep doing it? Why keep carrying this burden? Sophia paused, her hands resting on the rifle case. For the first time, her expression softened, the iron mask slipping just enough to reveal something human beneath. Because someone has to, she whispered. Because every shot I take means a soldier, a diplomat, or a civilian gets to see another sunrise. That's enough. Her words carried no triumph, no self-congratulation. Only weight, only truth. Robert felt his throat tighten. He had seen men haunted by a single trigger pull, their eyes forever shadowed. Yet here was a woman who had pulled the trigger countless times, who bore scars invisible yet undeniable, and still shouldered the burden without flinching. He wanted to protest, to tell her no one should have to carry that alone. but the look in her eyes told him she already knew, and had long ago accepted it. At last, she closed the case with a decisive click. The rifle was ready. The mission was set, and Robert Hayes understood he was standing at the edge of something he could never report, never admit, never forget. Sophia straightened, slinging the heavy case onto her shoulder with effortless grace. For a weapon weighing over 30 pounds, she carried it as though it were no heavier than a briefcase. Robert stepped forward, unable to stop himself. "Sophia." She paused, turning back slightly. "Make the shot count." For the briefest moment, her lips curved into a subtle smile. "Every shot counts, Commander. Tomorrow's just matters more than most." Then she walked toward the exit, her movement silent, efficient, already fading into the shadows she belonged to. Robert Hayes watched her go, his chest heavy with questions that would never have answers. In another 36 hours, the world would hear news of a crisis averted, a threat eliminated, a mission credited to anonymous forces. But he would know. He would remember the woman who prepared a rifle like a ritual, who spoke of impossible shots as routine, who carried the weight of unseen wars. And he would carry that memory, even if history never did. The maintenance bay felt empty after she left. The hum of the lights, the sterile smell of gun oil, even the faint echo of footsteps, all of it pressed in on Robert Hayes like the weight of silence after a storm. Sophia Carter was gone, yet her presence lingered, carved into the air, etched into his mind. Robert turned back toward the terminal. The screen still glowed with the file she had revealed, the record of a rifle that should not exist in the way it did. 73 confirmed eliminations, a maximum range beyond reason, a service history locked behind clearance levels far above his reach. His hand hovered over the keyboard. Protocol screamed at him to lock it down, to alert command, to drag this entire mess into the light. But another voice, older and wiser, whispered the truth. Some things survived only in shadows. With a long breath, he shut the file and activated the erasure sequence. The logs would show nothing. His access would vanish into digital smoke. To the system, the moment never happened. But Robert knew, and knowing carried its own burden. He sat for a moment in the quiet room, trying to slow the racing of his thoughts. He had spent his career serving rules, yet tonight he had crossed a line without hesitation. He wasn't sure if that made him reckless or human. 36 hours later, Robert watched the news from his office. The report was brief, framed in the sanitized language of official broadcasts. A convoy carrying American diplomats in a volatile region had been ambushed. A terrorist leader, long sought after, had been eliminated during the attack. The news credited coalition forces. There were no details on how it happened, no mention of the impossible distance, no whisper of the silent hand that had pulled the trigger. Robert leaned back in his chair, the glow of the screen painting his face in cold light. He pictured Sophia prone behind her rifle, eyes narrowed, breath steady, pulling the trigger with the certainty of fate itself. He imagined the bullet cutting through the shifting winds, striking true at a distance most would call fantasy. And he knew the truth. Sophia Carter would never appear in the reports. She would not be thanked, recognized, or remembered. Her mission would dissolve into rumor, buried under classified ink. Yet the lives saved that day, those who returned home, would unknowingly carry her work in every heartbeat. Robert wondered where she was now. Packing away the Barrett? Vanishing into some unmarked safe house? Waiting in silence for the next impossible call? He realized he would never know. And perhaps he wasn't meant to. In the weeks that followed, Robert noticed subtle changes around the facility. The rifle was logged as serviced by authorized personnel. The maintenance entry carried no names, no signatures, just a simple line in the records, indistinguishable from thousands of others. But Robert remembered. He remembered the steadiness in her voice when she spoke of impossible ranges. He remembered the flicker of vulnerability when she admitted the psychological cost. He remembered the subtle smile when he told her to make the shot count. She had become a ghost story in his mind, the kind whispered quietly among special operators late at night, when truth slipped out in fragments and shadows. The sniper who could make shots no one else dared. The woman who appeared did the impossible and disappeared without a trace. Some would laugh. Some would dismiss it as myth. But Robert knew better. Ghosts existed. They walked among soldiers, unseen but essential, carrying burdens too heavy for the rest. And Sophia Carter was one of them. Robert often wondered why fate had allowed him that brief glimpse behind the curtain. Perhaps it was chance. Perhaps it was a reminder that the world was larger, darker, more fragile than official briefings ever admitted. Or perhaps it was trust, a trust Sophia had granted him, measured in silence rather than words. He carried that trust carefully. He never spoke of her, never mentioned the rifle, never hinted at what he had witnessed. To the world, the Maintenance Bay incident never happened. To his career, it was a secret locked away forever. But at night, when he closed his eyes, he would see her again, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, hands moving with ritualistic precision. He would hear her voice, calm and steady, explaining the impossible as if it were routine. And he would remember the weight of her words. Every shot counts. Tomorrow's just matters more than most. Robert Hayes knew he would never meet her again. If he did, it would mean another crisis, another impossible mission hidden behind headlines that told only half the truth. And maybe that was for the best. The world needed people like her, ghosts in the system, unseen guardians. But it also needed the silence that kept them alive. So Robert carried her memory alone, tucked deep where no clearance code could reach. And somewhere out there, in a world constantly on the edge of chaos, Sophia Carter carried her rifle, waiting for the next impossible shot no one else could make.